Well, hello again. Pastor Ray Barnett here, and I'm glad that you could be with me for another broadcast on God's answers for anxiety and depression. As always, I want to wish all of you a good morning, good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Yesterday, we were down at the Mohawk River on an exceptionally beautiful fall day. And let me just say, as you can see here, I'm sitting in the family room, which is also my other office from the one I have down at the church. Sitting here on my Bowflex machine, just got finished doing some yard work, cutting the grass for the last time, I'm sure, this season. And well, I tell you what, I think today is even nicer than yesterday was. Beautiful weather, as I've been saying to you, throughout the spring, the summer, and now the fall, at least here in upstate New York. And as I have said repeatedly, in my mind, this is God's compensation for our present discomfort and inconveniences. Got to go to the gym again today. Let me see if I can show you my shirt here that somebody gave me. This is my Arnold Schwarzenegger shirt, which says "Come with me," and the bottom says "If you want to lift." This is my little, looks like a bug, but it's a windscreen, which I actually don't need in here, but I keep it on anyway. I got to go to the gym again today. Boy, I tell you, as I said yesterday, if you're a gym rat, as I am, boy, it feels good. Today, my training partner and I did power squats, and after 8 months of no weightlifting, and in my case, having gone on my very strict diet to reverse my heart disease, I never imagined I could be as weak as I am. But that's okay, because it'll come back. The strength will come back. And I told my training partner that we're not going to go at this very aggressively, because it'll be a big mistake. We're both feeling it. And in my case, at least, I could say, well, he did. He was telling me too. It's just a great feeling, sore or not, just to be out and to actually see people. Of course, I see people, and he does too. He's in my church. He gets to see people at church and at work. For the time that we were closed, of course, I didn't get to see anybody. And even during the 8 months, other than church meetings on Sundays and Wednesdays and prayer meetings or wherever, we gather. I haven't been in contact with many people other than here, social media, email, and so on. I'm very grateful to have a bit of a social life again, but mostly I'm just happy to be back hitting the iron. Today wasn't very impressive by any standards at all, but that's okay. Like I said, it'll come back. So I'm sitting in here because I just got finished, as I mentioned, with my yard work. Wanted to get this video up for you. And yesterday, I was talking primarily, I think, about the election. Right, today is November the 10th. The year is 2020. Year's almost over, hard to believe. And I was just sharing with you that we have so many things today that are stressors. And for you who deal with anxiety and depression, mental health disorders on a regular basis, getting yourself overly, I want to say excited, well, depending on who you voted for, I guess you could be either overly excited and enthused, or you're very angry, which 4 years ago we had the same situation, and 4 years before that, and 4 years before that, and 4 years before that, and on and on. We have been divided down the middle in America politically for a long time, well beyond my birth, well beyond my lifetime and yours. So it's nothing new. As Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun, and there isn't. All things are today as they have been from the day that Adam and Eve sinned against God. So we want to keep things in perspective so that, or I should say you want to keep things in perspective so that you're not overly excited, enthused, or overly disappointed, dismayed, and discouraged. Yesterday I was telling you that you should, as an American, for those of you who are watching and are American citizens, some are overseas, other countries, you want to be careful how much confidence you place in men. And I've told my congregations, plural, we've only had really two over the years, 44 years. I always tell them, that includes Pastor Ray. I'm just flesh and blood. I'm just and I used to work for the Postal Service for a few years while I was supporting myself and my family before ministry became full-time. I worked as an X-ray technician, then I worked in the Postal Service as a letter carrier. Occasionally, I would have to have someone sign a certified letter or a registered letter that they didn't want to get. Maybe it was a summons for court or something they didn't like, and they would get mad at me. And I used to tell them that I'm just the mailman. I didn't write the letter. And it's the same thing with the situation in the world. I didn't write the Bible either, but I will not fail, God help me, to continually state what it actually states, unlike so many false teachers and false prophets that we have in our country and around the world today. And they've always been around as well. The Bible says what it means. It means what it says. But here's the thing. Nothing has changed in time. Human nature hasn't changed. Satan hasn't changed. But gratefully, neither has God. God has not changed. He's still the same. He's very good. He's good. He's God. He's all-powerful. He's all-knowing. And I think, I did. I mentioned this verse to you yesterday during the broadcast. I think it's Psalm 108. It says that God hath prepared his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom ruleth over all. That was true from the beginning of time, before God created the heavens and the earth. God and his kingdom were ruling. When he created man, created us, he was ruling. He is ruling now in the nations, and he will continue to rule. He's never going to abdicate his rule and give it over to anybody, Satan or man, either one. And again, as Christians, this should be a comfort. This is the foundation. I remind you that as a pastor who has extensive experience in this area with anxiety, depression, and some mental health disorders, I have a unique ability. I'm uniquely qualified to deal with your situation from a very comprehensive, in a very comprehensive way. Most counselors cannot. For instance, you may be seeing a counselor who's not necessarily Christian, but maybe a good man or good woman, and they've helped you out. But there's always some place where they can't go any further. Whereas for myself, a subject I've studied for over 4 decades, anxiety, depression, and so on, I can deal with the subject in a very unique and comprehensive way that, unless a counselor is truly biblical and knows Christ and knows the Bible, they can't do it. I can. So what I'm saying to you is this: regardless of what you've read and heard, including the things that have helped you out, the foundation for security in the mind, to get rid of, these have been on other lessons I've gone through, the dynamics of how panic attacks work, and so depression as well. The foundation for your security, which will either greatly diminish your anxieties and your depression, although I'm aiming for in your life to see it go, disappear, be gone totally, is that you feel safe. If you're used to biblical terminology, it means you go to a church that preaches the Bible and you read it, or you read it, you come across the word saved. Christians refer to themselves, and we got it from Jesus and the apostles, that we are saved. And the Greek word sozo for saved means to be safe. Specifically and theologically, we are saved from the wrath to come. It means God is going to judge the earth. It will not be pretty. And for the majority of people who have rejected him and his righteousness, it won't be good. For you, however, the outcome is totally different. So no matter what is going on in the world, your foundation to take away your symptoms of anxiety and depression and so on is that you are safe. Safe. And this is the whole concept behind reducing panic, anxiety. Anyway, as I said before, if you go to a counselor and they will give you, even if they don't say it directly, they will give you advice that's designed to put you at rest, put you in a state of peace. But you cannot have peace unless you believe that you're safe. In other words, remember that I'm a New Yorker. Yonkers in particular is the fourth largest city in the state. But I also lived right directly on the border of the Bronx. My back door was the Bronx. My front door was Yonkers. And, you know, you don't go to bed at night. Nobody I knew went to bed at night was saying, "Hey, did you lock the doors?" My back door, as I said, the fire escapes were literally hanging over into the Bronx. You gotta lock the windows, you gotta lock the doors, you know, you gotta put all these safety measures in place. Well, in most parts of the country, we don't have to do that as much, but here's the point. One night, I said to my wife, "Did you lock the door?" Just the 2 seconds that she hesitated to think, did she or didn't she, I got up out of the bed, made sure that, and it had to be the back door, was locked. Why? Well, these big cities are dangerous places now. And so experience in my lifetime and in my life is that, you know, you lock your car and you lock up the house and you put all these safety measures in place, as I just mentioned, so that when you sleep at night, you're at peace. But what I'm trying to convey to you is this: if you don't feel safe, then you can't be at peace. So when you have a bad anxiety attack, for example, your body is responding, and it could be for various reasons, why it's doing what it's doing, the palpitations and the stomach churning, and both of the shortness of breath, you feel like you're having a heart attack, on and on and on. And what it's communicating to the brain is that you are in danger. The good news about anxiety and anxiety attacks is that you're not actually in danger. You're not really having a heart attack. And I always advise you all the time, make sure you've been thoroughly checked out by a competent physician. And if they've run the battery of tests and they're not finding anything materially wrong with your heart, your lungs, and so on, then you can begin to think in terms of anxiety. And the brain will still receive a message from the body that you're in danger. The good news and the truth is you're not. Well, in secular counseling, this is a good thing. It's still good news. But we as Christians can go much deeper. And Christ said to us, said to you, peace I leave you. My peace I give to you. Then he goes on to say that in the world, as we live, we will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. I've always been fascinated for beyond 40 years, reading and studying the Bible, that Jesus didn't just say he would give us peace, he said he would give us his peace. And again, if you've read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, you never see Jesus anxious or worried. He suffered, yes. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, we could use that as a notable exception. But the rule is, nothing disturbed him. Of course, he's God come in the flesh. But still, the promise is held out to you. Jesus is saying, I will give you my peace. So the title that I put on these, yesterday's message to you in yesterday's lesson, and today is from the 4th chapter of the letter of Paul to the Philippians. King James says, be careful for nothing. But the word careful means anxiety. So to do the translation, it says this: don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, with prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God shall, and I'm going to translate it for you, shall guard. Now think of a guard standing in front of the White House, even though they're really more window dressing. The Marine escorts in front of embassies and stuff, they don't have any bullets in their gun or in their pocket either. But just think of somebody guarding, Fort Knox, guarding against all of that gold from being taken and so on and so forth. He says the peace of God will guard your mind and guard your spirit from anxiety. This is the fascinating thing to me. How many pastors who, not that I really fault them, but they really should know this subject. Many do not. I think I told you once. Most pastors, when they get into a person, maybe like yourself, that has a big anxiety problem and you're depressed, they'll refer you out to mental health clinics. I've had to do the same as well, only when the person in front of me is just not listening, they're not cooperating, and I've always felt that people need relief one way or the other. So occasionally I've had to send people over to mental health, knowing that I couldn't help them. But most times I didn't have to. I could understand, I could empathize, I could sympathize, and then I could speak to it. And this is how I do it. Not so much with the technicalities of anxiety and how they work, though I know it, and I've given it to you on these broadcasts, but what Christ has promised us. Let me go back to the election for a moment. And again, I don't know when you're watching this. Could be a month, 2, 3, 6 months later. But at the moment, today being November the 10th, and the election, only in the media, has been decided, but it's far from over at the moment. And it's causing a lot of tension. Go onto social media, which is, I want to say it's a joke. I won't name the platform, but one of these social media platforms reminds me of being in the 4th grade. Anyway, if you're on social media, you get the picture. People are just rude, intransigent. They use a lot of vulgarity, and it goes on and on. And you don't need that. If you're on social media, my suggestion is to use it as little as possible. Now, obviously, I use it, right? Because I do these broadcasts, and I have our sermons. My sermons are up on Sundays on YouTube, 2 YouTube channels. I got a number of social media platforms that I'm on. But the great majority of what I do is putting up devotions, Bible verses, announcing messages to come up, and other things. And also, pictures of my family. I'm in touch with friends of mine I've been friends with for, in one case, almost 60 years. Long time. So for me, it has purpose, but I can't spend much time looking and watching and listening to what people are doing. It's not productive, and especially for you, if it gets you amped up, it's not going to be good for your situation with anxiety or depression. So use it. Let me say it this way: use the social media. Don't let it use you. Don't let yourself get sucked in. In the present situation with the election that's now passed, what's going to happen? I told you my conviction. I think we're facing great difficulties, not only in our country but in the world. And that's speaking prophetically as far as Bible prophecy. And we've got to be prepared for it. I don't want to see you with your present distresses and the condition that you have be made worse by getting drawn into the vortex of what is going on in the world. Again, be intelligent, be responsible, both as citizens and people who care about other people, certainly. But just don't let yourself get drawn into the drama. Don't let yourself get drawn in. I'm going to say it bluntly, just don't trust the media. There's an old adage that everybody knows in the media, journalists, newspaper people: if it bleeds, it leads. Nobody sells newspapers. Nobody is going to look at the news unless it's something really dramatic, something really exciting. And again, it's the reason I don't watch the news on television. People arguing, screaming, and fighting. I can't trust everything other than maybe the weather. Local news in your city and town is going to be different, of course. But when it comes to national and international news, it's a real toss-up. So I don't let myself get drawn into it, because it's going to disturb my peace that Jesus gave me. And don't you let it disturb you, because it's the peace that Jesus gave you as well. So let me just simply say that in the 4th chapter of Philippians, the Apostle Paul writes that if we would tell God our problems, tell God what's troubling us, tell God what we need, what we want, and so on, that he would give us the peace of Christ. I put the 2 verses from John I was quoting earlier, and Philippians chapter 4, put them together, and you're going to have not a peace, but the type of peace that Jesus himself has. And particularly when he walked the earth as a man, you're going to have the peace of Christ. In other words, you're having the same peace that Jesus has and that he had when he walked on the earth. Now, this is the beauty of God's answers for anxiety and depression. This is the beauty of it. And again, I'm not trying to diminish secular counselors. You've had good counselors, perhaps. Well, there's bad ones out there too, but let's say, so I like my counselor. They really helped me. That's good. That's good. I'm just simply saying that they're limited. And when we have the Bible, we have a whole lot more that we can add to this picture. In particular, I have a whole lot more that I can do and use to help you. So think of this as we finish today. The peace that Jesus himself has. Not just a peace. Deep breathing, we've gone through that technique. It's good. If you're on some medications because you really have to, okay, fine. But what we're going after is the peace, the very peace that Jesus himself has and has promised to give to you. So, keeping with the theme, don't let yourself become anxious. Remember I told you yesterday, if you have 10 things going on that are stressors, just using that number, most people it's a lot more. Find, if you could discover just by examination, which ones can I control? Say to yourself, which ones can I eliminate, or at least get under control? And do it. Get them under control. You can control who your friends are. You could control social media. You can control, and you must, how much time you're spending on it. And say to yourself, okay, I'm going to limit myself to this much time and then I'm done. And discipline yourself to get off and stay off. Read your Bible, pray, go for a walk, exercise, do something creative and something positive. Don't become your own worst enemy. And the point is, if you control what you can control, you'll have more strength and more energy to address what you cannot control. And this is going to be a great help to you. So be anxious. Don't be anxious for anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, the verse also says, let your requests be made known unto God, and the peace of God, which surpasses understanding, shall guard your hearts and your minds through Christ Jesus. Let me pray for you. Father, once again today I pray for my friends, many of whom watch on a daily basis, many of whom have written to me, mostly privately, telling me how much these broadcasts are helping. I pray today, once again, they would be delivered from their anxieties, from their pressures, from their depressions and their oppressions and everything else that's troubling them. Give them peace in their homes and on their jobs. Help them to accept the very peace of Christ which he offers. All right, so weather's going to change here this week. I think it's going to, well, tomorrow's supposed to rain. As I told you once before, I'm going to need to be doing these broadcasts more and more as the weather changes. Indoors, probably from here. It's very convenient for me. I could just hop back over here to my computer, get my work done. I got to work on my next doctoral dissertation. So a lot of things for me to do. But if you're interested and you haven't subscribed to the channel, you're interested in staying with us for these lessons, then subscribe. And make sure you hit the notification button as well. And we'll be good. We'll be good. We will get through this life as long as we stick together. Pray for one another. Help one another. We are going to make it in Christ, because Christ cannot fail. All right. We'll see how tomorrow turns out, but I have every intention of putting up another broadcast for you, and God willing, I'll do that. And if the creek don't rise, I'll see you again here tomorrow on God's answers for anxiety and depression. God bless you. Thanks for being with me, and I'll see you tomorrow.